baby boomers.
I used to be with it.
Millennials.
Okay, boomer.
Generation X.
What's going on?
And Gen Z. What do they have in common? Not a lot, it turns out. But one thing they can agree on is that this is the political podcast they want to listen to. Welcome to Not My Generation, the political podcast that looks at political events, news, and happenings across the world and at home through a generational lens. Your hosts are Dr. Emily Stacy and Professor James Davenport, two political scientists from Rose State College. But the views expressed on this program are solely the views of the host and their guests and do not reflect the views of Rose State College, its administration, faculty, or students. Coming up on today's program, we'll stand your butt up.
This is about math books, people.
Quit this nonsense.
They pay us to talk about politics.
And now, here are James and Emily. Hey, Emily, how are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I am doing all right. It has been an interesting week or so in this nation and in this state.
To say the least.
We've had a lot of stuff going on. I want to talk about, do you ever watch MMA fighting or stuff?
I do not. I can say that I am not well versed in the sport.
You know, we have a U.S. senator from here in Oklahoma who claims to be a former MMA fighter and has a record. There's a dispute whether it's 3-0 or 5-0. So
I didn't realize.
Yes, I read an article about that just the other day.
Contested record. My goodness.
Apparently, there was some hostility between Senator Mullin, Markwayne Mullin from here in Oklahoma, the junior senator from Oklahoma.
I don't think I would call him that on the radio.
He might
on the airwaves,
right?
Dude.
I know, but that's
don't
the term
diminish him, sir.
That's the term we use for the more recently elected one,
yes,
right?
That's true. Yes.
And so he and I don't remember the gentleman's name. He's the head of the Teamsters Union.
Yeah, Sean O'Brien. Fain. That's right.
Sean Fain. Yeah,
that's right.
Okay,
we got there.
Give us a minute. We'll come up with it.
Between the two of us.
So he and Sean Fain, they'd had a prior committee meeting. They'd had some tweets back and forth, and apparently Mullin didn't like something that Mr. Fain had posted on Twitter. Another reason why maybe we should just all take a step back from Twitter. But that's another comment for another day, another story. But anyway, and so read off some of these comments in this committee meeting, right?
He was looking for a
I think
fight.
he was. Well, he was certainly looking for some attention,
yes.
I think, right?
Yeah.
And so the guy, the Fain said something along the lines in one of his tweets, anywhere, anytime.
Cowboy.
Right, cowboy. And so in this meeting, Mullin said, this is a time and this is a place, and Fain said, I'm ready to go. And I think the quote was, well, stand your butt up.
Yes.
Is that what, I think that's what Mullin said, right?
It was. And let me just pause here because I love the irony that we're totally okay with throwing down on the Senate floor, decorum or in a Senate committee. But we're not gonna say the ASS word, right? We're gonna right. I think that's the line in Congress, I guess now. I just wanted to point that out.
And then Fain's response was, "Well, stand your butt up first." And so Markwayne Mullin does. And who comes in as peacemaker? Senator Bernie Sanders.
I don't know if it was peacemaking. Exactly.
He was like, this is a Senate committee hearing. This is not, the octagon or whatever he said. But so there wasn't any actual violence, right, but there was a lot of talk, and I'm wondering if this is going to be a trend, right? So we also had an episode where former Speaker McCarthy was accused of elbowing another colleague.
Walking down a hallway, I believe, right, a corridor,
and so I'm just wondering, maybe this is how we're going to settle disputes in Congress now. We're just going to put them in a ring and say, hey, whoever wins, and that's what we're going to do.
So we're just repeating history. We're just going back, right? Going back. I mean, duels without the guns, I hope. I mean, I hope that doesn't.
So Mullin, he did some interviews after this and was talking about, in the Senate, we used to bring canes in and beat people with them that we didn't like. And maybe we need to do that to put some discipline back in it and to get people to think about what they're going to say. I just don't know about that. Right?
Yeah.
It is true, right? So there was an instance in the U.S. Senate where one senator caned another senator and put him in a coma for a few days. Wow. So that he's not incorrect on that, but I don't know that a lot of people want to go back to that time.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that civil rights and liberties weren't really being observed at the time that this senator was caned.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, this was like 1830s or something. So yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I thought we had emerged from this notion that violence for the sake of politics was acceptable. Yeah. Right? I thought we had left that back in the 19th century.
I agree with you. And I think that, his response is he wants to frame it as distinctly Oklahoman, right? In Oklahoma, we
don't put up with that
exactly.
Kind of
yeah, if you flip somebody off, you better expect to get your finger broke. It was another direct quote from your sitting senator. Yeah, I don't know. We've come so full circle at this point in American politics. I don't know. It's volatile. It's dangerous, obviously. I'm glad that Markwayne Mullin had some sense about him to listen to Bernie Sanders, because that was something I didn't anticipate at all. I almost was afraid that Sanders would inflame, you know what I mean? By trying to calm him down, it would only, right, exactly. Right. So I'm glad that Mullins, had some sense about him to not get hauled out of the Senate committee room. But yeah.
I'm just wondering, I really get the sense this was more of a media stunt than it was. This is more puffery, and and one of the things he said, and I'm not sure he's totally wrong about this, is, well, my constituents expect this of me, right? In one of his interviews, after that, they would have been mad at me if I didn't do this. I'm not entirely certain he's 100% wrong on that.
No, I agree. No, there's certainly a flavor of conservative in this state that eats that up, right? It's the, let's go, Brandon. It's the, right, it's that.
That's right. So there you go. There's your example, the shining example of our leaders in Washington, D.C., modeling appropriate behavior for all the young children, I guess. Right?
Yeah. Why does it always have to be one of ours?
Another thing that we probably need to discuss real quickly. So there was a leak of a couple of videos of testimony of two Trump attorneys. I think one was during their plea arraignment. Another one was either of a deposition or something. But so Jenna Nelson basically says in her plea arraignment that, all these attorneys, all of us had told Trump that the election was probably lost. Yeah. And I forget who it was, but it was someone senior to her in the administration in Trump's staff, says, well, the boss doesn't plan on leaving no matter what. And I'm like, I had not envisioned that anybody would say that out loud anywhere. I might have thought that Trump might have those kind of proclivities. Sure. But I had hoped that anybody working for him would have said, as Nelson says, she told that person it doesn't work that way. But it doesn't. It seems like at least a few people around Trump were like, we're all set. Yeah, we're staying here, and they're going to have to move us out by force. So that wasn't good. Sidney Powell, another Oklahoma connection. So Sidney is from an attorney who's from Oklahoma, was leading the charge on a whole bunch of conspiracy theories about how the election was stolen and faulty machines, voting machines, and some tie to Venezuela and all. I mean, just out there stuff. And admitted that most of that was fabricated, but also made a comment that, the one reason why I had the ear of Trump is that I was the only one not telling him he actually lost the election.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
what do we do with and my question to folks who are thinking about marking the ballot for Trump is, what will it take to convince you he should not be in office again, right? What does it take, right? These are not people. These are all people. And this was the thing about the January 6th hearing that Congress did, last year. These are not people who were opposed to Trump. These are not people who didn't like him. These are people who were working for him, who have now said, this is what was going on, right? And I'm just wondering, what's it going to take? what is it going to take for that polling number that we still see where he's way ahead of any of these other
40,
Republican
points.
candidates? Yeah. What's it going to take for you guys to say maybe there's a better alternative?
Is it a bigger fish? Is it a Meadows? Is it a Giuliani turning over? What?
But I don't get the sense that it's any of that.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately,
there's something there that these people see in him that goes beyond any of this, right? And it scares me because if you remember on the campaign trail in 2016, he said something along the lines, I could walk out and shoot somebody on Broadway and my followers would be right there supporting me, right? And it scares me that that's more true than I wanted to believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially when you couple it with the last story about Mullin and the violence, right? The hostility that is becoming extraordinarily volatile in the political climate in America. I don't know. It's par for the course right now. And how do we get back to really civil discourse? How do we get back to agreeing to disagree?
I don't know. And it feels like, again, and I've said this before, it just feels like all of our institutions are driving us to that kind of polarization, right? The media, social media for sure, interest groups, they're all pushing us to view each other not as people who want the same things by and large, but disagree on how to get there. They want to view us as combatants, as enemies, and people who we have to conquer you, whoever you is, right?
Is it easier for them? I mean, in relation to what we are constantly talking about, these two political parties don't have a majority, right? The majority of Americans identify as independents and can go either way. And so that polarization keeps them at least in some sort of control over a fraction of their base.
I was listening to some political scientists discussing some recent research on polarization. And the bottom line of this research was a lot of people today are electing more extreme candidates, left and right, more extreme candidates because they don't view that Congress is actually going to do anything. And if Congress is not going to get anything done, we might as well have the person out there who entertains us the most or who feeds us the very raw red meat kind of stuff that we want, as opposed to a more moderate who's going to actually do the job of figuring out how to practically craft legislation that does something, right?
What do we do in that instance? What do you do?
That was the question.
When the people's body no longer works for the people.
When it's not functioning, and we're seeing, and we talked about this before, you have some on the right and the Matt Gaetz faction, you have a few on the left. They're not there to facilitate legislation. They're not there to solve problems. They're there for some other purpose, and they don't care if they burn the institution down in the process.
Yeah, being the loudest voice in the room is not governance.
Right. But it gets you a lot of followers on Twitter, apparently. I don't know.
I guess. And again, I reluctantly point out that a lot of these folks are from my generation. So, yay, millennials. We're still winning.
We also had some interesting stuff here in the state, locally, right? Yeah. So there was an article that came out that talked about, nobody is surprised that to learn that Governor Stitt has been in it seems like a fairly constant conflict with the Native American tribes over various issues, right? But there was an article that came out that talked about how much in legal bills that the state was having to pay for these conflicts. I think you had mentioned something about that.
Yeah, so I need to preface this with the article is by the lovely and fantastic Carmen Foreman, who will be here on our next podcast episode with the Oklahoma Voice. We're very excited to talk to her specifically about this and other stories that she may be working on. But yeah, LOFT, right, the Legislative Office of Fiscal Transparency, reported that OMES is paying for the legal fees for these state tribal disputes, and they put a figure of $3.3 million of what these legal fees associated with the ongoing dispute have cost the state at this point, which is a higher figure than had been estimated previously. Okay. And so this is, like we said, a state agency. This is not some sort of independent commission. It's a state agency, right. And so they are being pretty transparent about this. The other problem about using this particular fund to pay is that it does not require legislature approval. And so you've got some Republicans. In fact, I would love to see if we could get the Appropriations Chair, Kevin Wallace, on at some point to talk about this. He noted in this story that he had lingering questions as to how STIT and the executive branch was able to pay for these fees, knowing that it should have theoretically gone through the legislature. So very interesting stuff. And of course, this opens up the door for Attorney General Drummond to really criticize STIT for not just using public funds, but also pointing out, again, Kevin Stitt hiring out-of-state attorneys to defend the tribal compacts. He notes that it is a, quote, continued waste of state resources on this matter, end quote. I don't really have words for this.
So this is the thing, right? And I dealt with something similar to this when I worked in Oklahoma County, what feels like a lifetime ago, when sometimes the sheriff, who at that time oversaw the county jail, there would be lawsuits against them. And oftentimes the sheriff would want to hire, rather than use the legal representation from the district attorney's office, would want to hire outside attorneys. That would cost the county obviously more money to do that. And so it's not uncommon to do this, but I do wonder, because the board, in that situation, the Board of County Commissioners had to basically say, we authorize the sheriff to go hire this legal counsel, right? One would think that there would be some kind of oversight for, and this isn't just about STIT, this would be about any governor in that position, that if they're going to hire outside attorneys rather than using the state's attorneys, the Attorney General's office and such, that there would have to be some type of legislative approval of that, right? That seems like a good check on abuse of this power. And again, I'm not accusing, I don't want anybody to say that the STIT has abused his power, but I'm just saying that seems like a logical oversight.
Exactly. Right. Oversight is the word of the day, kids. Yeah.
That we would want.
Absolutely. Right. This is a checks and balance issue.
And I do think there is a question that Stitt and his administration are going to have to answer is what are we getting for that $3.3 billion? Right. Because now...
and what resolution are we seeking, right? As a state, he's acting as our chief executive, correct? So what is the state looking to get out of this, right?
And it doesn't seem... So this comes on the heels, right? On the heels of the interim study that Speaker McCall held on Native American relations, the tribal relations with the state, in which the theme coming out of that was the legislature is going to be much more involved in some of these things going forward, right?
I would think so.
So I'm wondering how this is going to fall into that category as well.
I think it's going to be a real interesting session coming up.
Another story that is similar in this sense of executive branch officials spending money is Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters recently put out I don't know if it was an RFP or what it was, but basically he wants to hire someone to up his media exposure beyond the state of Oklahoma, right? Is my understanding.
National level, yes.
And so this, I don't know if it would be a firm or an individual, but they would not be an employee of the state, right? This is going to be a consultant or some such. And the idea is that they had a list of things. They wanted so many opinion editorials. They wanted so many media interviews with national, cable news and whatnot. They had this long list of stuff that they wanted this, whoever it is, to produce. And there was a question of, is that what the state school superintendent should be pursuing? Should that be the priority that they pursue? Right. This too comes on the heel of him announcing his endorsement of Trump for president, right, and how he was going to be active in that campaign. I don't know if he's going to be active in Oklahoma or active in other states or both, but
yeah, it does seem to coincide with him wanting to lift his image beyond the state of Oklahoma. And let me just say that I'm happy with anybody who can get him to stop making YouTube videos in his car. I think that should be priority number one.
I wouldn't hold my breath.
Come on, media director.
But so, and again, this is Walters has been criticized, not just by his critics and his opponent, his political, but even people who, there was recently someone who retired who was overseeing, I think, grants or something like that. And in leaving, she gave some interviews and in a letter that became public in which she said, "You're never here. I was trying to reach out to you. I had all these questions and you never responded to this on this." And so there has been some criticism, not all from his opponents, because in that letter, she's like, I support what you're trying to do. I want to be a part of that, but I can't because you're not giving me the resources I need to do that. And so I think this idea of hiring somebody to do this brings the question back, is his administration using the resources they have for the purpose of bettering education in Oklahoma?
Right, exactly.
I think that's a tough question for his office to answer in that regard for that. So, and listen, we should all be concerned, whether it's a Republican, a Democrat, whoever, we should all be concerned about how officials use the tax dollars they are entrusted with, right? And we should all be looking at, is this the best use of those tax dollars? Does it serve the purpose of that office? Does it serve the purpose of the people of the state, right?
Exactly.
And so I don't, I want people to understand that we're not just sitting here taking pot shots at two Republicans because they're Republicans. They're the people in power. They're in these offices. And if it was somebody else doing this, we would have the same exact questions. That's what political scientists do, right? Is evaluate this kind of stuff. Something else that didn't happen in Oklahoma, but is a state or a local issue. So Murfreesboro, Tennessee passed an ordinance. Now the ordinance uses language that says they're banning sexual activity in public. Right. If you go deeper into how that is defined, one of the things that is considered sexual behavior that would be banned or punished would be homosexual behavior. So I don't know how that would actually play out.
Yeah.
But it was really weird.
It is, yeah. So this story comes off the heels, obviously, of last year, or I guess this year. I don't know what year it is. This year, of Tennessee being one of the states to try to ban drag and drag shows, things like that.
Which was struck down by the courts.
It was absolutely, right? Yes. So the ordinance is actually a little bit more vague than that. It's not sexual behavior. It's indecent behavior. And so the definition of indecent is certainly subjective, but they see it as, quote, indecent exposure, public indecency, lewd behavior, nudity, or sexual conduct. And so sexual conduct is where they put in homosexuality. Right. And it's just this blanket homosexuality, period. And so you have a lot of the citizens there concerned about what that means for their lives, right? It goes beyond just the concern about banning certain books in public libraries or school libraries, things like that. It's about, human beings being able to exist on the streets together.
Sure, right. So for those who aren't quite following, right? So this could possibly, and this is what the criticism is that you could have a man and a woman walking down the street holding hands or kissing, but if you had a man and a man or a woman and a woman doing so, then they could fall under and get cited or arrested for that behavior, right? Possibly. And this goes back to equal protection, the equal protection clause that has been used quite a bit to protect the rights of same-sex individuals and not having laws targeted towards them, So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that. One thing I know, the courts do not like vagueness.
Right, yes.
And they have consistently strike down laws for being too vague. So this could be tied up in courts. And I think this is the question. We see this in Oklahoma, too. We see it in other states where legislative bodies, city councils, the state legislature, whoever passes a law that is likely to be unconstitutional on its face. Yeah. And
we do
and
it
they're
all
like,
the time.
and they're like, we're going to do it. And that's for the lawyers to worry about. Yeah. Right. And again, if we're talking about using the resources,
Public
and by the way, time is a resource. We have a limited legislative session. How much time do we want to take out of that session passing bills? How much time does a city council want to take passing city ordinances on things that are likely to be struck down in the courts to begin with, right? And how much resources do we devote to defending those things, right? So it's
interesting. It's obviously it's going to get more prevalent as we go into 2024. This is a hot button issue for both parties.
That you're probably right. Let's come back to Oklahoma for a second, because you were mentioning before we came on the textbook committee. So the state has a textbook committee. I'm going to rant on that here in a minute, but I want to hear about what's going on with this textbook committee.
So the textbook committee regularly meets to determine the curriculum, and so it's actually meeting today. The story broke about this about a month ago. You've got to fight, of course. Moms for Liberty are very much present in the fight about banning books or making sure that books that the children write in K through 12 are not indoctrinating kids, right? Sure. They're not part of the quote unquote woke agenda. So this textbook committee is meeting today to approve math books, right? We're not, this is about math books, people. We're not talking social studies, humanities, we're talking math to use over the next 6 years. And so Moms Against Liberty has filed a complaint against McGraw-Hill, and I guess we probably should note that we use
McGraw-Hill books in our division. We do for our American government
class. And lots of our other departments do as well. They're a decent publisher. But the complaint against McGraw-Hill by Moms for Liberty notes that in these math books, they are teaching social and emotional intelligence, right? They're part of the woke agenda.
So I'm just going to say there's a lot of social science research out there on social and emotional intelligence and social and emotional learning. And this is going to lead into a rant here in a minute, but I want to let you go ahead and give us some more information on this.
I mean, it's really kind of incredible. So McGraw-Hill certainly responded. Their chief academic officer, McClarty, noted that McGraw-Hill firmly believes that student success in academics is tied not just to the quality of the content, but also pedagogy, right? We talk about how we teach these kids. And so it may not always align with, I guess, what state legislators or state executives think is appropriate, but they note that this is part of the trend, right? That most publishers are incorporating some sort of social emotional learning in textbooks. But I'd be hard pressed. I'd like to see the word problem in like a calculus textbook that is teaching me that I need to go, protest with my fist out or something. I'm flummoxed by this situation, and I will let you go on your rant. It's just ridiculous.
Here's my thing. Why do we have a state textbook committee?
How many school boards do we have?
We have tons of school board. We have 500 school districts. I'm going to assume that means there's a school board for each of those, right? We have thousands of teachers who have studied their disciplines, who know what they're doing. We should be entrusting these folks to be able to choose the curriculum that they believe best suits their students, that will best facilitate learning in their students. I don't need some state board up here somewhere saying, you can't use this one, you can't use that one, oh, you must do, or you can use it. Those folks pay no consequence if they are wrong. Exactly. You know who pays the consequence? The students and the teachers who are having to deal with that, right? And so this is just infuriates me a little bit that we have a committee that nobody knows who's on this textbook committee, right? They're probably appointed. Probably the governor has some appointees. The speaker has some appointees. Yep. Nobody knows who these people. How do we hold them accountable if they make bad decisions, right? Quit this nonsense. That's quit it. Trust teachers to teach. Yep. And if the school boards don't think those teachers are doing a good job or they don't think they're using the right curriculum, they can address that. But these folks at the state level have no business trying to dictate who uses what math books or government textbooks or history books or anything else. Yeah. They don't know. No, they don't. They don't know. Let the people on the ground doing the work, let them choose what they want.
I love the libertarian rant. This is great. No, this is perfect.
And listen, if the parents in that school district don't think that they're choosing right, and they have a problem with it, they have two options now. They can go to that school board and they can say, look, we have objections to this, or they can use that new tax credit that they have and they can go choose another school, right? And so there are so many other ways of addressing this. This is not stuff that the state is competent to do, number one, and it is not something that it is beneficial for it to do. And we should stop this madness. And that's my libertarian rant for the day.
I love it, right? Because it's overreach. It's overreach, right? And so again, this is listeners where we meet at the ends of our political ideologies. And this is perfect. So the math mindset is what they are, Moms for Liberty, are arguing that it, quote, promotes self-awareness, self-regulation, and skills for relationship building and decision making, which...
Boy, that sounds horrible.
I can't
I don't
imagine
want my kids learning
having
any of that
critical thinking
stuff,
skills.
right?
I don't understand what is so scary about this. Having critical, independent thinking skills is just terrifying.
Right? I would think I would want people who were skilled at math to also be skilled at critical thinking.
I'm scared of math, but for different reasons, right? I don't know.
And that leads into another state thing that you were wanted to talk about, which is this House Bill 1397. Is that it?
Yeah. Just interestingly, again, Oklahoma Voice does such a good job. Shout out again. So they reported last week on 1397, which instructs the State Department of Education to basically develop an optional curriculum to teach about the civil rights movement in compliance with House Bill 1775. So it's a Republican-sponsored bill, an authored bill. Lipak from Claremore. And again, he's really advocating for teaching about Martin Luther King Jr., the events of civil rights, the movement of from 1954 to 68, which I think is interesting. They kind of delineated, the movement when it began and when it ended anyway. But I'm not sure. And so it's getting some pushback, obviously, from folks like teachers who are concerned about whether or not it goes far enough. Of course, if you don't recall, House Bill 1775, passed in 2021, prohibits schools from teaching things that students find discomforting or that they feel guilty about. It's obviously a controversial bill. It's just... I'm just not sure how well it's going to address, the entirety of the civil rights movement. It's really hard to cherry pick, to talking about Martin Luther King Jr. versus talking about Rosa Parks, right? If you're talking about MLK, then you're not covering, because Rosa came before that. And so you're really kind of cherry picking exactly what you want the students to know. I think that might be a little bit dangerous. Obviously, if it's starting from 1954, when are they learning about, the end of the Civil War? When are they learning about slavery? When are they learning about Reconstruction? When are they learning about lynchings? When are they learning about, any of the things that are part of American history, not just Black history or African American history? That's concerning.
It is American history, right? It is American history. So I said I was done with my rant. I'm not sure I am.
Yay. Right. Go for it.
Again, if you're teaching about civil liberties or civil rights in the United States and you're not making people uncomfortable, if you're not uncomfortable as you're teaching it, you're probably not doing it right. There's tons of stuff that have happened in this country, right? And I'm an optimist. We've had these discussions before. I believe in progress. We've made tremendous progress in these areas, opening up more opportunity for people to have their full citizenship rights, opening up opportunity for people to express their civil liberties, operate within their civil liberties, to create a more equal society where we're not saying, oh, you're that race, you have to sit over there at this restaurant, or we've made tons of progress on that, right? But we didn't make that progress easily.
No,
we did not We did not make that process absent conflict. And to try to teach this in a way that doesn't make anybody feel uncomfortable, you're not teaching them the right stuff.
Absolutely.
This is complicated stuff. It should make us all uncomfortable in discussing it, not uncomfortable in the sense that I feel guilty for something somebody did 50 or 100 years ago, but uncomfortable that we had a society at one time that viewed public lynchings as okay, that viewed harassing people for their sexual orientation as okay. There was a time when that was perceived as just fine. And we should be uncomfortable in discussing that and say, what can we do? Are there places in our society where some of this is still lingering around? What can we do about it? Right. And as a libertarian, I'm going to say, first of all, lots of that discrimination, lots of that hostility came from governments. Right? Governments, state governments across this country enforced Jim Crow laws, wrote them, enforced them. The first bill passed by the state Senate in Oklahoma was a Jim Crow law, right? So states were, it's not like they were just neutral arbiters, and they were active in this. And so the first thing we have to do is, how do we prevent states from doing this, right? Then it's, what can we do as individuals to ensure that we're not contributing to that, right? But it crawls up my back that people are like, oh, we shouldn't make our children feel uncomfortable. Yes, we should, not in a negative sense, but in a positive sense, that they understand this is where we've come from. This is what we need to be thinking about. How do we ensure that we continue progress that we've made, right? How do we enlarge the number of people in our society who actually really have full citizenship in this country, who have the protections that the Bill of Rights offers, who have equal protection of the laws, right? That's what we should be looking at. And these are hard conversations to have. They are. And you can't do painting a rosy picture on everything.
Absolutely not. No, the 1954 to 65 delineation is concerning, right? The first Civil Rights Act was passed in 1866, right? And so you are missing everything up to Martin Luther King Jr. effectively.
Well,
it's concerning. It's concerning.
You're also missing in that time frame two highly important Supreme Court cases from Oklahoma in relation to access to higher education for, in this case, for women and African Americans, right? And so how do you not include that in this, right? Those are Oklahoma-related cases, and because they don't fit within that time frame, our students aren't going to learn about them? Right. That makes no sense. Right. Again, we should be trusting teachers to know what they want to teach, and we should entrust school boards and parents to work together to say, here's what we think is important to do.
Exactly.
Right?
I've gone to 2 curriculum nights so far, and my kid is in pre-K, 4-year-old in pre-K in Norman Public Schools. I mean, they're great about it. Sure. If you want to be involved in the entire process. Right. Don't just come with, the pitchfork.
Right. The other thing that I want to talk about here is, look, you and I have been in school a long time. We were in school a long time, right? I sat in classes with teachers and professors that taught things that I didn't necessarily agree with. Sure. I sat and heard a perspective that I thought, I don't think their perspective's right. But you know what? I can still learn from that. Absolutely. We should not be saying you can only have this perspective, and that's not education either.
It's indoctrination from the other side.
That's exactly what that is, right? I want as varied. I want when my kids go to college, I want them exposed to a whole range of perspectives. and a whole range of ideas. And then they can form, based on what they've learned and based on their experience, they can form their perspective from seeing these others, right? I don't want as much as I love being a libertarian, I don't want my kids, every professor being a libertarian, because there's way more than that perspective out there, and they need to be exposed to those things, right?
What college is about.
You would think, right? You wanted to also talk about, we had some elections this week, right?
No, not this week.
Was it last week?
It was, I don't know what, again.
I thought it was early this week.
I don't know what, well, we had elections. There's been a bunch of different elections. So at the national level is the ones I wanted to talk about, from the 7th, of November. And so Ohio specifically, is the one I really wanted to talk about, because I think it sets up, again, a conversation that we've been having consistently over the past at least couple of months about what the GOP is really running on. What as a party, how are they coming together? Not just to sort of move on from Trump, but what issues really define this new Republican Party? And abortion is not it. So Ohio was yet another state on November 7th.
A relatively red state, yes,
right.
Republican controlled.
Yes, right. It has been known as a swing state in the past, but more recently has been pretty consistently red. So they voted not only to enshrine the right to abortion in their constitution, but also to legalize marijuana on the same evening. You had a couple of different other elections, specifically the Kentucky governor's race, which is very interesting. You had Democrat Andy Beshear retain his seat, right? The incumbent against a Trump-endorsed Republican, African-American, running for governor. And so that was a really interesting race as well. So in terms of the ballot measures in Ohio, I think the exit polling is really critical here, and why I think the GOP might be in trouble in terms of a strategy, and need to maybe pull that together pretty quick. So the total demographics in terms of male, they were 47% of the total vote for the right to abortion. 53% of the male vote voted yes, 47% no.
So even a majority of the male voters voted
53 yes,
that. Okay.
47 no. Female made up 53% of the total population voting, 60% yes, 40% no. Break it down by race. This is where it gets really interesting. So 85% of the total votes were white, Caucasian votes. 53% yes, 47 no. Black, 10% of the total vote, 83% yes, 17 no. Hispanic, 3% of the total vote, 73% yes, 27% no. So overall, the 85% of the total vote was Caucasian or white, so 53 yes, 47 no, and non-white was a total of 15% of the vote, 79% yes, 21% no.
So that's where you see that margin. And so
that's ginormous.
This seems... in state after state, we've seen this in Kansas, we've seen this in a couple of other states that are predominantly red, and they are voting to protect some level of access to abortion, right? And I think, you always say, be careful what you ask for, right? Conservatives have consistently said we want to get Roe v. Wade overturned, and I find it somewhat ironic that what might result from that is actually greater protections for abortion than what existed prior to that, right?
Exactly.
And so this is going to be an interesting thing. Now, the questions that I'm going to have, does this now, in states that have done this, does this kind of take that issue off the table for both parties?
Right.
So Democrats in that say we protected it here, and so does that motivate Democrat voters who might be inclined to vote on that, right? Republicans they've overwhelmingly, and did you break that down? How did Republican voters vote?
No, I did not.
That would be interesting to see too.
I did not get that demographic.
I would really, my bet is it was pretty close even among Republicans. You have to have some Republicans voting for that to get to a 60% or so margin, right? So, yes, abortion may be, and I think this would be good for American politics, maybe moving away from being the issue that everybody polarizes around, right? Because of what's happening in these states. That's right, happening in these states. We're going to be looking at other issues. In fact, there was a article in the Oklahoman a month or so or ago, discussing just that very thing, right? Is abortion being replaced by other issues, at least on the Republican side of things. So very, very interesting election results.
I thought so too. On that, so liberals accounted apparently for 34% of the votes in the exit polling in Ohio, which was up quite a bit from 20% in the 2022 midterms and 21% in the 2020 election. And so backing 94 to 6% for abortion, and 85 to 15 for marijuana. For Republicans, they were 35% of the voters, which was down 6 percentage points from the 2022 midterms. That's a low, apparently, since 2012. And voters said 61% to 37% that abortion should be legal.
So 61% of Republican voters.
My goodness.
So this is what we're seeing in state after state, right?
That's way bigger than I would have expected.
Again, we have polarized folks at the extremes, right? No abortion everywhere, anytime, or abortion all the time, everywhere. And then you have the public, which is in the middle. It says, we think abortion should be legal and protected in certain circumstances. Right. We do think certain restrictions should be placed on it. That's where the majority of the people are. Yeah. And I think that's what you're seeing in these election results is they're not buying into these extremes, right?
So does that translate on the national level?
I'm wondering what that's going to do in, I think we're more likely to see abortion being taken off the table as an issue that either party
wants to discuss.
Especially in these states like that have passed these kind of laws. And these are citizens, right? This is not the legislature passing this. Right?
You send it back to the states. That was what the decision
of these states passed these initiatives to get that done, right? Wow.
Very interesting.
Woo, that's a lot of stuff to cover. And it really does set up for a very interesting 2024, right? And we're going to have presidential primary elections starting in, even though New Hampshire, they're taking a hit by maintaining on the Democrat side, right? Because the Democrat Party has said,
tried to push it.
We're not going to recognize your delegates, and Biden's not going to be on the ballot in the Democrat primary.
They don't care.
And New Hampshire's like, we don't care. Yeah. We're running it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's going to be an interesting election year, I think. And these issues and how they play out, how voters perceive them, and what that means for who they mark their ballot for is going to be really interesting to watch. Yeah. Well, hey, this is our episode prior to Thanksgiving. I thought we might end real quickly on just some things that we're thankful for. And if you want, I'll go first. I've got some things in mind. I, of course, very thankful for my family. And for those who don't know, I have a large family, relatively large. And I have a wonderful wife. I have great 5 kids. They're all doing well, and I'm just very thankful. Nobody has had physical ailments. Nobody has had to deal with emotional trauma or things like that have caused problems. Nobody is addicted to anything. So I've been really, really thankful for my family and their encouragement. I've told you I make my daughters, my youngest, to listen to our podcast, and they're constantly giving me feedback on that kind of stuff. So I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for a job that I enjoy going to. I mean, there have been times when I've had jobs that I was like miserable. I was like, I have to do this again. That's not the job I'm in. I'm thankful for a work colleague like you, Dr. Emily Stacy, who drags me into all sorts of things and keeps me a little younger than I actually am by being involved. So I'm very appreciative of someone who collaborates with me so much, and we do so much stuff together. That's certainly something I'm very thankful for. And I'm just thankful that, there's a lot of people in a lot of worse situations than I and my family are in. And I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to do some of the things that we do. And my hope is that we increase the opportunities for others as well, right? So I'm thankful for all of that. and just I feel very, very blessed, if I can say that. I do.
I think so too. Yeah, same for me, right? I am very thankful for my family as well. Christopher is sort of my rock and kind of keeps me sane most days, and our adorable, just sassy miniature Tide Pod version of me. Evie is fantastic. In fact, this afternoon, she's won a hero award at her little elementary school.
Nice.
And so
Awesome.
right, already mommy's little overachiever. So I'm very excited for that and just all the support and that I am blessed to have with my family as well. It's not a job. This is, they pay us to talk about politics. They pay for like insurance for my child, for me to get to live my dream. And so it's not work for me. I know I drag you into a lot of stuff. We do a lot of things. I am tired, but it's all so fulfilling for the students, for us. It's just absolutely a dream come true to be able to work at Rose State for, wonderful students with wonderful faculty. And so I am very grateful for my work wife, for my work husband who is here on the podcast with me. I'm just, we're lucky human beings. We've got a lot of cool stuff going on, man.
And I hope everybody out there listening has a wonderful Thanksgiving. It takes some time to appreciate what you have. Take some time to express that appreciation to people, because we never know when they're not going to be there around for us to do that with. And better for us to express that now while we have them with us.
Yes, sir.
All right. We will see everybody next time.
We love communication that goes both ways, not just you listening to us pontificate. We would love to hear from our audience. If you have comments, suggestions, or would like to contact us about possibly being a guest on the show, please email notmygeneration@raider.rose.edu.
Hey listeners, this is Santiago Ramones with Not My Generation. Sometimes, when discussing a variety of items on the show, James or Emily get things like names or years wrong. So, I'm here to correct the record, so to speak. In today's program, when James and Emily were discussing the confrontation between Senator Mullin and a labor leader, they identified the wrong labor leader. Senator Mullin's dispute was with Sean O'Brien, the president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, not Sean Fain, who is, in fact, the president of the United Automobile Workers Union. Also, in discussing recent revelations from attorneys representing former President Donald Trump, James misidentified one of those attorneys as Jenna Nelson. The correct name was Jenna Ellis. Finally, it was Senator Charles Sumner from Massachusetts who, in 1856, was beaten brutally not by a fellow senator, but by Representative Preston Brooks over an anti-slavery speech Sumner had delivered a few days earlier. According to the U.S. Senate's website, Representative Brooks, quote, chose a light cane of the type used to discipline unruly dogs, unquote, with which to beat Senator Sumner. Not My Generation is a joint production of the Rose State Political Science Program and Possibilities, Inc. Today's show was produced and mixed by me, Santiago Ramones. You can follow Not My Generation on Twitter at NMG Podcast and on Facebook at Not My Generation Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.